My name is Richard Gold. I'm 58 years old, worth $5 million, and tonight I'm writing my daughter out of my will. They say you can't choose family, but you can choose who inherits your empire. I stand at the windows of my Park Avenue study, Manhattan glittering below like scattered diamonds. The Macallan in my hand costs more per ounce than most people make in a day. I've earned the right to drink it while I dismantle my daughter's future. The betrayal started small. Missed birthdays, calls only when she needed money, visits that felt like invoices. But I could forgive all that. What I can't forgive is what Marcus, my driver and security, told me 6 months ago. She's been calling estate lawyers, he said, asking about competency hearings, power of attorney, and Richard. She's been touring assisted living facilities, the luxury kind, the kind that keep residents comfortable, sedated, out of the way. My daughter wanted to have me declared unfit and warehoused while she liquidated my life's work. At 58, while I still run 3 miles every morning and manage a portfolio that would make Warren Buffett take notes, the final straw came. Last week, Henderson, my estate attorney, called with news that made my blood run cold. Your daughter contacted me, he said. She had account numbers, Richard, property assessments, information that was supposed to be confidential. She's been in your files, like a thief, like a vulture too impatient to wait for death. I poured another whiskey and stared at the manila folder on my desk. Inside are documents that will change everything. A trust established 3 years ago under her mother's maiden name, Harrington. Invisible unless you know where to look. Uncontestable because of how it's structured. Isabel hasn't just been written out of the will. She's been surgically removed from my financial existence. But the real twist isn't what I'm taking away. It's who I'm giving it to. Elias Crane, son of my late best friend Thomas. While Isabel was burning through my money on failed boutiques and her third husband's bail, Elias was visiting every Sunday, discussing books, learning the business, showing the kind of respect that can't be faked. The documents transfer everything. To him, the estate, the portfolios, the properties, all of it. And if Isabel tries to contest it, there's a provision Henderson calls the nuclear option. Fight the will and everything. Every cent automatically transfers to charity. She doesn't just lose the lawsuit. She loses the entire game. I built my fortune over 30 years. Brick by brick, deal by deal. I built it for her, so she'd never know the poverty I escaped. So she'd never feel less than worthy. The irony tastes bitter. She thinks I've gone soft with age. Thinks because I've been quiet, I haven't been watching. She's probably out there right now, calculating my life expectancy, running mental spreadsheets on her inheritance, but she didn't know I'd planned for this moment years ago. Tomorrow, I'll call Henderson, set the final pieces in motion, tell Elias he's about to become heir to an empire he's actually earned, and wait for Isabel to discover that the fortune she's been counting in her sleep never existed for her at all. The city sparkles below, millions of lights representing millions of small betrayals and smaller dreams. Somewhere among them, my daughter plots my obsolescence. Let her plot, I've already won. The thing about raising a child with everything is, they never learn the first rule of real wealth. It's not about having money. It's about knowing how to keep it, how to protect it, how to choose who deserves it. Isabel grew up in marble halls and Swiss boarding schools. She learned to ski in Gstaad and sail in the Hamptons. But she never learned the most important lesson, that loyalty is the only currency that actually matters. Elias learned that lesson burying his father at 25. Learned it working 2 jobs through Columbia. Learned it refusing my help until he'd proven he didn't need it. One child by blood, one by choice. Tonight, I choose. The whiskey burns perfectly. Outside, Manhattan continues its eternal hustle. Everyone scrambling for their piece of the pie. They don't understand what I understood 30 years ago. Real power isn't about what you can take. It's about what you can give and who you give it to. Isabel thought she was playing chess, moving pieces toward her inevitable inheritance. She didn't realize I'd already cleared the board. My phone buzzes. Text message. I already know who it's from before I look. Hi, Daddy. Wondering if we could have lunch this week. Need to discuss something important about your future care? Love you. Future care. As if I'm already an invalid. As if she's already measuring me for a wheelchair. I delete the message without responding. Let her wonder. Let her worry. Let her discover, when the time comes, that the only future I've planned is one without her in it. The manila folder sits patient on my desk. Tomorrow, I'll open it, sign the papers, make it official. Tonight, I'll finish this whiskey and remember the little girl who used to fall asleep on my shoulder, who used to call me her hero, who used to mean it. That girl is gone, has been for years. What remains is a stranger who wears my daughter's face and calculates my worth like a balance sheet. But I'm Richard Gold. I didn't build my empire by being sentimental. I built it by seeing things clearly, moving decisively, and never apologizing for protecting what's mine, even from family, especially from family. The whiskey glass is empty. The night is young, and somewhere across the city, Elias Crane is about to become the son I should have, had, the heir I deserve, the future I choose. Isabel wanted to play games with my legacy. She's about to learn that I've been playing a much longer game, and in my game, she's already lost. The beauty of a trust hidden under her mother's maiden name. She could search for years and never find it. The beauty of the nuclear option. Even if she does find it, fighting it means losing everything. I've spent 3 years building the perfect trap. Not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. She forced my hand the day she started shopping. For my cage. Tomorrow, the cage door closes. But not on me, on her. I wasn't born into money. That's the first thing people get wrong about me. My father sold insurance in Queens, spending his days in other people's living rooms, hawking policies to families who could barely afford groceries, let alone life insurance. My mother balanced books for a dentist, who paid her cash under the table. We lived in a 2-bedroom walk-up where the radiator clanged like Jacob. Marley's chains and the walls were so thin you could hear the neighbors' marriages falling apart in real time. Poverty is the best teacher I ever had. Better than Columbia. Better than any mentor. Poverty teaches you that money isn't just numbers in an account. It's freedom. It's dignity. It's the ability to say no. I learned young that there were 2 types of people in the world. Those who had options and those who didn't. My parents didn't have options. They had obligations, limitations, conversations that started with, we can't afford, and ended with, maybe next year. But I watched. God, how I watched. I watched the men who came to our neighborhood to collect rent, wearing cashmere coats and driving cars that purred instead of coughed. Watched how they moved through the world like they owned it, because they did. Watched how my father's shoulders would hunch when they spoke, how my mother would disappear into the kitchen, how money made some men tall and others small. I was 12 when I made my first real money. Not delivering papers or shoveling snow. Real money. I noticed that the corner bodega threw out magazines after tearing off the covers for returns. But the wealthy neighborhoods uptown, they'd pay premium for out-tubed issues of Vogue and Harper's Bazaar. I built a network of kids to collect them, paid them pennies, sold them for dollars. By 13, I was making more per week than my mother brought home from the dentist. My father found my stash one day. $400 in a shoebox under my bed. He sat on my bedroom floor, counting it over and over, like he couldn't believe it was real. When I explained my business model, supply chains, profit margins, market inefficiencies, he looked at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Don't tell your mother, he said quietly. Then, even quieter, but don't stop. That was the moment I understood that my father knew he'd lost. Not to poverty. Poverty had already won that fight. He'd lost to his own acceptance of it. He'd made peace with small, I never would. High school was a 4-year business education, disguised as public education. While my classmates were reading The Great Gatsby, I was studying Gatsby. Not the character, but the con. How he built himself from nothing. How he created a mythology that became more real than reality. How he understood that in America, you could become whoever you had the audacity to claim you were. I worked 3 jobs. Bodega in the morning before school. Tutoring rich kids in the evening. Their parents paid $50 an hour for me to do their homework while they texted. Late nights at a law firm, filing papers and absorbing everything. How lawyers talked, how they dressed, how they turned words into weapons and weapons into wealth. Columbia came with a full scholarship. Not because I was smart. Intelligence is common because I was hungry. The admissions essay asked about my biggest challenge. Other kids wrote about dead grandparents or divorced parents. I wrote about compound interest, how it was both the most beautiful and terrible force in the universe, how it could build dynasties or destroy families, how understanding it was the difference between being the hammer or the nail. The acceptance letter came on a Tuesday. My mother cried. My father poured himself a scotch he couldn't afford. I felt nothing. It was just the next rung on a ladder I'd been climbing since I was 12. College was where I met them. The ones born on third base, who thought they'd hit triples. Trust fund kids, who wore their wealth like birthright instead of achievement. They fascinated me. Not with envy, with anthropological curiosity. How did people who'd never been hungry think? What did they fear? What drove them when survival was guaranteed? The answer was nothing. They drifted through classes like tourists, majored in philosophy or art history because they could afford to, spent spring breaks in Cabo and summers in Europe, collecting experiences like stamps. But a few were different. Old money different. They didn't flaunt it, didn't need to. They moved through the world with a quiet certainty that came from knowing their great-grandfather's name was on buildings. These were the ones I studied, learned from, absorbed their mannerisms like a sponge. Henderson was one of them. We met in a tax law seminar senior year. He was already planning to join his family firm, 3 generations of estate lawyers, the kind of firm that didn't advertise because their clients came by birth, not marketing. "You're the scholarship kid," he said one day after class. Not cruel, just factual, like noting the weather. Then he added something that surprised me. "You're also the only one here who understands what this is really about. Keeping money in the right hands." That we became friends, or whatever passes for friendship when one person is studying power and the other was born wielding it. He taught me things that weren't in textbooks, how generational wealth really worked. The structures, the trusts, the quiet mechanisms that kept fortune flowing through bloodlines like water through aqueducts. My first job was at Steinberg & Associates, third-tier firm with second-tier clients and first-tier ambitions. They hired me because I was hungry and cheap. I stayed because I could see the angles they couldn't. The REIT deal came 2 years in. Ridgewood Properties, over-leveraged underwater, heading for bankruptcy. The partners wouldn't touch it. Too risky, too complicated, too much work for too little upside. But I had done my homework. Spent weekends driving to their properties, talking to tenants, reading every filing going back a decade. The bones were good, the management was bad. Classic. Turnaround opportunity. I needed $300,000 to make it work. Had $40,000 saved. The rest would have to be borrowed, begged, or stolen. I chose borrowed. Hit every bank that would see me. Pitched until my throat was raw. Got laughed out of offices from Wall Street to Water Street. Finally found a private lender in Chinatown. The kind who charged interest rates that weren't quite legal and collected debts in ways that weren't quite civilized. "You default, you disappear," he said in accented English. Understand. I understood. Signed papers. That would have made my law professors weep. Went home and didn't sleep for 3 days. The next 6 months were hell distilled. I lived on ramen and determination. Lost 20 pounds. Lost my girlfriend. Lost touch with everyone who wasn't essential to the deal. But I gained something more valuable. Clarity. The kind that comes from having everything on the line. The bankruptcy proceedings were a knife fight in a phone booth. Creditors circling like sharks. Lawyers billing by the breath. Every day a new crisis. Every night a new nightmare about Chinatown and concrete shoes. But I'd seen what they hadn't. The properties were in pathogragous neighborhoods. The kind that were war zones today and would be wine bars tomorrow. I just had to hold on long enough for tomorrow to arrive. It did. The restructuring went through on a Thursday. By Friday, I'd lined up new management. By Monday, an investment group from Toronto was sniffing around. 6 months later, they bought the portfolio for 3 times what I'd paid. After paying back Chinatown with interest that would have made a loan shark blush, I cleared $400,000. I was 25 years old, and I was just getting started. I met Catherine at the Princeton Club in 1994. I was there as Henderson's guest, still learning to navigate rooms where my father would have been serving drinks. She was at the bar, arguing with the bartender about the proper way to make a martini. Stirred, not shaken, she insisted with the kind of certainty that came from always being right. "And if you bruise the gin, I'll have your job." She wouldn't have. Catherine didn't get people fired. She got them to want to be better. It was a gift I'd see her use 1,000 times over the years. The ability to make you feel like disappointing her would disappoint yourself. He's making it correctly. I said because he was, and because I wanted her to look at me. She did. Blue eyes like winter morning, cheekbones that could cut glass. The kind of beauty that didn't need introduction. And you are? She asked. Richard Gold. I said. Gold. She repeated, tasting the name like wine. New or old? New, I admitted, but learning fast. She smiled then. Not the polite smile of someone being hit on at a bar. The real smile of someone who just heard something. Interesting. Catherine Harrington, she said. Old, but not stuck in the past. We talked until the bar closed. About books, about business, about the difference between earning money and deserving it. She had a mind like a scalpel and wasn't afraid to use it. By the end of the night, I knew 2 things. I was going to marry her, and I was going to earn that too. The courtship took 2 years. Not because she was playing games, but because she was serious. Her family was American aristocracy, not Rockefeller money, but Mayflower money. The kind that came with responsibilities, expectations, and a family tree that went back to when New York was New Amsterdam. Her mother was the one who saw it first. What Catherine saw in me. He'll either build an empire or destroy himself trying, she told her daughter. I know because Catherine told me years later. Either way, she'd added with a smile, it won't be boring. We married in October 1996. Small ceremony at the Harrington estate in Greenwich. 100-year-old oaks dropping leaves. Like blessings. Her father walked her down the aisle with the expression of a man handing over the keys to a kingdom he wasn't sure I deserved. The next decade was a blur of calculated risks and careful accumulation. I left Steinberg to start Gold Asset Management. Started with one client, a dentist from my old neighborhood who remembered the kid whose mother kept his books. But 1 became 10. 10 became 50. I had a gift for seeing value where others saw risk. By the time Isabel was born in 1999, I had crossed the $1 million mark. By her 5th birthday, it was 3 million. By her 10th, 5. Each million harder than the last, but also more certain. Money makes money. The first million is a mountain. The 5th is a molehill. But something changed when Isabel arrived. The hunger that had driven me for 30 years suddenly had a purpose beyond myself. Every deal, every investment, every calculated risk, it was all for her now. So she'd never know the weight of want. So she'd never hear we can't afford. So she'd have every option, every opportunity, every open door. I just never imagined she'd use those options against me. Looking back, I can see where it started. The precise moment the gratitude began to curdle into entitlement. She was 7. We were at the Harrington estate for Thanksgiving. Her cousin had gotten a pony. Isabel wanted one too. Next year, sweetheart, Catherine promised. If you're very good. No, Isabel said. Not a tantrum. Just a flat refusal of reality. Now, I should have paid attention to that. The calm certainty that what she wanted, she would have, when she wanted it. But I was building an empire. I had deals to close, wealth to accumulate, a legacy to secure. So I bought her the pony, and the next thing, and the next. Each yes making the next yes inevitable, until no became a foreign language in our house. Catherine saw it first, started pushing back, started saying no, started trying to teach lessons about value and gratitude and earning instead of expecting. But I undermined her every time. What was the point of having money if you couldn't spend it on your daughter? What was the point of success if the next generation couldn't enjoy it? I know now what Catherine knew then. There's a difference between providing and spoiling, between giving opportunities and creating expectations, between building a safety net and building a prison of privilege. The real tragedy. Isabel's smart, brilliant, even could have been anything, done anything. But why should she? Why struggle when struggle had been bred out of her life? Why hunger when you've never known empty? I created a perfect princess, then acted surprised when she expected a kingdom. But even princesses should know better than to plot against the king, especially when the king is Richard Gold, and he's been playing chess while everyone else played checkers. The shift didn't happen overnight. Disrespect is like cancer. It starts with a single corrupted cell, then multiplies in the dark until it's everywhere. With Isabel, The first symptom appeared when she turned 25. She had just graduated from Brown with a degree in art, history, and a minor in spending my money. I'd thrown her a graduation party at the Yale Club, 200 guests, crystal flowing like water, a string quartet playing Mozart, the kind of evening that costs more than most people's annual salaries. She showed up an hour late. No apology, no explanation. Just breezed in wearing a dress that cost $8,000 and an expression that said she'd rather be anywhere else. That's when I knew something had shifted. Not the lateness, young people are careless with time. It was the absence of gratitude. The way she moved through that room like it was her due, not her gift. The way she air-kissed guests without remembering their names, even though these were people who had known her since birth. Catherine noticed too. I found her on the terrace later, smoking one of her secret cigarettes, a habit she'd hidden for 20 years, but indulged when stressed. She's becoming someone I don't recognize, my wife said, crushing the cigarette with more force than necessary. She's young, I replied, still finding herself. Catherine turned those blue eyes on me, the ones that could still stop my heart after all these years. She's found herself, Richard, and what she's found is that she likes taking more than giving. I should have listened. Catherine had radar for character flaws, the way some people have perfect pitch, but I was still in protection mode, still making excuses, still believing that love could fix what privilege had broken. The requests started small. Could I cover her Chelsea apartment, just until she found a job? Could I pay for her yoga retreat in Costa Rica? It would help her network. Could I invest in her friend's startup, the one selling artisanal air or crystallized intentions or whatever? 20-somethings were monetizing that week. I said yes. Always yes. Each yes buying me another few weeks of her attention, another dinner where she'd actually show up, another phone call that wasn't about money. But the calls that weren't about money stopped coming. By 27, Isabel had mastered the art of tactical affection. She'd call on Sunday nights, not to chat, but to prep me for Monday's request. Her voice would drip honey as she asked about my health, my work, my weekend. Then, casual as a cobra, she'd mention whatever she needed. Dad, you know that property in Tribeca you're developing? I was thinking it would be perfect for a gallery space, just a small corner. I have such a vision for bringing art to the neighborhood. I gave her the corner, 3,000 square feet of prime real estate. She opened a gallery that specialized in what she called disrupted reality installations. It lasted 6 months. The last 3, I paid the artist myself because she'd burned through her budget on opening night champagne and never quite got around to the business side of business. Thought the pattern established itself. Grand vision, dramatic launch, slow decay, quiet failure, then silence until the next request. But it was Christmas 2019 that showed me how far we'd fallen. Catherine had been diagnosed with cancer that fall. Stage 3, ovarian. The doctors were optimistic, but Catherine and I knew better. We'd seen enough of life to recognize when it was starting its exit. We didn't tell Isabel immediately. Catherine wanted one more normal holiday, one more Christmas, where she was a mother, not a patient. We planned dinner at the house, just the 3 of us, like the old days. Catherine spent weeks planning the menu, decorating the tree, trying to create one last perfect memory. Isabel called an hour before dinner. There was noise in the background, music, laughter, the clink of glasses. "Daddy, I'm so sorry," she said, and I could hear her smile through the phone. "Brad surprised me with a trip to Turks and Caicos. We're literally at the airport. Give Mom my love. We'll celebrate when I get back." Brad was husband number 2, a crypto entrepreneur who talked about disruption the way priests talk about God. They'd been married 8 months. It would last another 4. I could have told her about the cancer, could have guilted her into coming. But Catherine grabbed my hand and shook her head. "Let her go," she mouthed. "Let her remember me whole dot." So I did. Hung up the phone and served my dying wife Christmas dinner for 2. We ate in silence, the empty chair at the table louder than any conversation. Catherine died 3 months later. Isabel made it to the funeral, flew in from Bali, where she'd been finding herself again. She wore Chanel and cried perfectly, just enough to seem devastated, not enough to ruin her makeup. She gave a eulogy that sounded like she'd Googled things to say when your mother dies. The reception was at the house. 500 people came to pay their respects. Old money New York, new money Manhattan. everyone who'd ever mattered in our lives. Isabel worked the room like a professional widow, accepting condolences and air kisses, making sure everyone knew how close she and her mother had been. Then I overheard her in the library. She was on the phone, probably assuming the thick doors provided privacy. But I knew that house, knew its acoustics, knew exactly where to stand, to hear everything. It was actually perfect timing, she was saying. The estate should clear probate by summer. Daddy's obviously not going to remarry at his age. I'm thinking we could probably get him to move to something smaller within a year. The house alone is worth $15 million. I stood in my own hallway, listening to my daughter plan my obsolescence while my wife's body was barely cold. That's when I made my first call to Henderson about the trust. That's when I started planning. For this moment, the disrespect accelerated after Catherine's death. Without her mother as buffer, Isabel's requests became demands. Her visits became inspections. She'd walk through the house like a realtor, mentally cataloging assets. Daddy, you don't need all this space, she'd say. It must be so lonely rattling around here. Have you thought about something more manageable? Maybe one of those luxury communities. They have people to take care of everything, including keeping me quiet and out of the way while she liquidated 3 decades of careful accumulation. The worst part, she thought I didn't notice. Thought grief had made me soft, age had made me stupid, loneliness had made me desperate for whatever crumbs of attention she threw my way. But I noticed everything. Every forgotten birthday, every canceled dinner, every time she called me by my first name instead of Dad, a subtle demotion from father to obstacle. I noticed when she started bringing Brad to family attorney meetings, introducing him as her advisor. Noticed when she asked increasingly specific questions about trust structures and tax implications. Noticed when she befriended my accountant's assistant and started getting CC'd on emails she had no business seeing. And I certainly noticed when Marcus told me she'd been to see Henderson behind my back. That was 6 months ago. A Tuesday afternoon, I was in a board meeting when Marcus texted a breach of protocol that meant something serious. I excused myself and called him from the hallway. She visited Henderson's office, he said without preamble. Spent an hour there, left with a briefcase full of documents. Henderson, who'd been my attorney for 20 years, who'd helped structure every trust, every acquisition, every protection I'd put in place, who knew where all the bodies were buried because he'd helped dig the graves. I called him immediately. He answered on the first ring, which told me he'd been expecting my call. "Richard," he said, and I could hear the discomfort in his voice. "I need you to know I told her nothing, but she had questions, specific questions, about succession planning and competency standards and power of attorney protocols. The kind of questions that suggest she's been getting advice from someone." "From who?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Brad's attorney, Melissa Hartwell. She specializes in elder law, specifically in transitioning family assets when the older generation becomes unreliable. Unreliable like I was, a car with too many miles, ready for the junkyard." That night, I sat in my study with the good whiskey and the bad thoughts. My daughter was planning a coup. Not a violent one. Isabel didn't have the stomach for blood. A bureaucratic one. Death by 1,000 documents. Murder by medical opinion and legal precedent. She wanted me declared incompetent. Wanted control of my assets while I was still breathing. Wanted to warehouse me somewhere pleasant and quiet, while she and Brad converted my life's work into cryptocurrency and contemporary art. The funny thing, I wasn't even angry. Anger requires surprise, and I wasn't surprised. I was disappointed, but disappointment had become my default setting with Isabel. What I felt was closer to clarity, the kind that comes when fog lifts and you finally see the road ahead. She thought she was being subtle, thought her questions about my memory were casual, her suggestions about medical checkups were caring. She'd mentioned how Uncle Harold had developed dementia. Did I remember Uncle Harold? Was I keeping up with my cognitive exercises? Had I considered genetic testing? Small seeds of doubt, planted carefully, watered with false concern, intended to bloom into legal arguments about my capacity to manage my affairs. But she'd made a crucial error, the same one every amateur makes when they try to play in the professional leagues. She'd assumed I wasn't paying attention, that success had made me soft and age had made me stupid. She didn't know about Marcus's reports, didn't know about the private investigators, Didn't know about the forensic accountant I'd hired to track every dollar she'd ever taken, every loan she'd never repaid, every investment that had mysteriously evaporated. Most importantly, she didn't know about Elias. Crane had been visiting every Sunday for 3 years. Not for money, he'd never asked for a cent. Not for connections, he'd built his own. He came because his father had been my best friend, and because he understood something Isabel never had, that wealth wasn't about what you could take, but what you could build. While Isabel was planning my retirement, Elias was studying my methods. While she was consulting elder law attorneys, he was learning how I'd structured my holdings. While she was viewing me as an obstacle to overcome, he was treating me as a mentor to honor. The contrast was poetry. Dark poetry, but poetry nonetheless. Last month, Isabel made her final mistake. She called to say she was coming for dinner. Actually coming, not canceling last minute. Said she had something important to discuss. I knew what was coming. Marcus had seen the documents in her car. Powers of attorney, medical directives, competency evaluation forms, all partially filled out, just waiting for my signature. She arrived on time. Another tell, wore conservative clothes. Instead of her usual avant-garde statements, even brought wine, though she knew I only drank whiskey. We ate in the dining room. She complimented the food, asked about my day, performed daughterly concern with community theater competence. Then, over dessert, she made her move. "Daddy," she started, and I could see her mentally rehearsing lines she'd practiced in the mirror. "I've been worried about you, living alone in this big house. No one to look after you. What if something happened?" "I'm 58, I reminded her. "I run 3 miles every morning. I manage a portfolio worth more than most small countries' GDP. What exactly do you think is going to happen?" She had the grace to look uncomfortable, but not enough grace to stop Doddits. "Just, ... You're not getting younger. And with Mom gone, I think we should talk about putting some safeguards in place, just in case." She produced the documents like a magician, pulling rabbits from a hat. Legal forms that would sign away my autonomy, faster than you could say elder abuse. All presented as concern for my well-being. I looked at the papers, looked at my daughter, saw Catherine's face in hers, but none of Catherine's soul, and made a decision. "You're absolutely right," I said. "We should definitely talk about safeguards." Her face lit up like Christmas morning. She thought she'd won. Thought I was the fool she'd written me off as. She didn't know that while she'd been plotting my obsolescence, I'd been planning her disinheritance, that every document she'd prepared had a mirror document in my files, that for every move she'd planned, I had a counter-move already in play. "Let's discuss this properly," I said, "with lawyers present, next week." She agreed eagerly, probably already spending her inheritance in her mind. We set a date, shook hands like business partners, not blood relatives. After she left, I called Henderson, told him to accelerate the timeline. Move the assets to the Harrington Trust immediately. Contact Elias about his future inheritance. Filed the nuclear option paperwork that would ensure any contest meant total loss. Then I poured myself a whiskey and stood at my window, watching. The city lights twinkled like stars I'd pulled from the sky. Somewhere out there, my daughter was celebrating her victory, planning my future, counting money that was already gone. She had treated me like a problem to be solved, a bank account to be accessed, an old man to be managed and moved aside. But she'd forgotten the first rule of gold. It's heavy, and when it falls on you, it crushes everything. The disrespect had started small. A missed dinner here, a forgotten birthday there, but it had metastasized into something monstrous. Something that saw me not as a father, but as a financial obstacle. Well, obstacles can be moved, but sometimes they can also move themselves. And I was about to show my daughter just how much movement an old man could manage. The call came on a Thursday. Marcus had been tracking Isabel's movements for months, but this was different. His voice carried an edge I'd never heard before. "You need to hear this yourself," he said. "I'm sending you an audio file. She doesn't know I was there. I was in my office, reviewing quarterly reports, normal Thursday afternoon activities for a man my daughter thought was sliding into senility. I opened the file on my secure phone, put in my earbuds, and listened to my daughter plan my destruction. The recording was from La Bernardine. Of course, she'd choose the most expensive restaurant in Manhattan for her conspiracy. She was with Brad and someone else, a woman with the kind of voice that billed 4 figures an hour. The quality was excellent. Marcus had gotten close enough to catch every word. The timeline is critical, the woman was saying. Once we file the initial paperwork, we need the psychiatric evaluation within 30 days. Dr. Morrison is already on board. He'll find cognitive decline, early stage, but enough to establish concern. My daughter's voice, sweet as arsenic, and the financial audit that comes after. Once we have medical power of attorney, we can freeze the accounts pending review. Your father won't be able to move assets without your approval. What about the house? That was Brad, already measuring 4 new curtains. The woman laughed. The Harrington estate, that's the crown jewel. With your mother gone, transfer is straightforward. We can argue he's unable to maintain such a large property. Safety concerns. The court loves safety concerns. How long? Isabel asked. From start to finish. 6 months if he fights. 3 if he doesn't. Most don't. The shame of being declared incompetent. At his age, with his reputation, he'll probably sign rather than face that humiliation. I paused the recording, took a breath, let the betrayal settle into my bones like winter cold. Dr. Morrison I knew. Him, we'd golfed together at the club. His son had interned at my firm one summer. Now he was pre-diagnosing me with dementia for a fee. The recording continued. They discussed strategy, timeline, division of assets. My daughter had spreadsheets. Actual spreadsheets, detailing my worth, my properties, my investments. She'd done her homework, even knew about the Bermuda accounts, though not their current balances. The really brilliant part, the lawyer continued, is that we don't need to prove actual incompetence, just the potential for it. A few forgotten appointments, some confusion about dates, maybe a minor car accident. Small things that establish a pattern. I haven't seen any of that, Brad said. Isabel's laugh was ice-cracking. We'll see what we need to see. He's been forgetting things, repeating himself, getting confused about appointments. All lies. I hadn't forgotten a single thing. My memory was a steel trap that held 30 years of financial data. Every birthday, every betrayal, every moment that led to this one. The transfer to the facility should be smooth, the lawyer said. Avalon Gardens has an opening in their memory care unit. It's practically a resort. He'll be comfortable, that word again, the euphemism for controlled, and if he refuses, Brad asked, then we go nuclear. Full incompetency hearing. Bring in witnesses about his erratic behavior, his isolation since his wife died, his obsession with control. Paint a picture of a man losing his grip. I'll testify, Isabel said without hesitation. As his daughter, my word carries weight. I'll talk about finding him confused, frightened, lost in his own home. The jury will eat it up. That the recording ended. I sat in my leather chair, in my office overlooking Manhattan, in the empire I'd built, from nothing, and felt something I hadn't felt since childhood. Pure, crystalline rage. Not hot rage. Not the kind that makes you break things or scream. The cold kind. The kind that freezes your blood and sharpens your mind and makes you capable of terrible, necessary things. My daughter hadn't just betrayed me. She'd recruited allies, drawn battle plans, prepared to destroy my reputation, to steal my fortune. She was willing to paint me as a doddering fool, lock me away, and dance on the grave of my dignity. But she'd made one crucial error. She'd declared war while I was still capable of fighting. I called Henderson immediately. He answered on the first ring. How quickly can you move? I asked. The Harrington Trust. 24 hours, maybe less. The paperwork is ready. Do it. Everything. And I want the nuclear option filed today. Richard, are you sure? Once we do the sign, sure. She's been to see Morrison. She's got Melissa Hartwell drawing up incompetency papers. They're planning to move in 6 months. Silence. Then, Jesus Christ, there's more. Send someone to Avalon Gardens. Find out what unit they're holding. Get copies of any paperwork with her name on it. You think she's all ready? No, she has. This isn't impulse. This is planned. I hung up and called Marcus. Time to accelerate our timeline. I want everything, every meeting, every phone call, every text message. And I want Elias here tomorrow morning. You, moving on the trust, tonight. By morning, she'll be worth exactly what she's earned. Nothing. Marcus paused. You want me to keep tracking her? No. After tomorrow, she's not our concern anymore. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went through photo albums. Not digital ones, the real ones, with weight and permanence. Pictures of Isabel as a baby, a toddler, a 6-year-old, looking for the moment it went wrong. The precise point where love curdled into greed. There she was, at 8, on her pony, smiling like she'd conquered the world. At 12, in Paris, annoyed that the Louvre was boring. At 16, getting her first car, a Mercedes, because anything less would have been embarrassing. At 21, graduating from Brown, already looking past me toward whatever came. Next. Catherine was in so many of the pictures. My anchor, my conscience, my better half in every way that mattered. What would she think of what I was about to do? But I knew the answer. Catherine had seen this coming, warned me, tried to pump the brakes on the runaway train of Isabel's entitlement. She'd have understood, maybe even approved. The next morning, Elias arrived at 7 sharp. He looked like it. His father, same steady eyes, same quiet confidence, same ability to fill a room without saying a word. Coffee, I offered. Please. Black dot. We sat in my study. The same chair where Isabel had plotted my obsolescence now held a man who understood honor. I'm going to tell you something, I said, and then I'm going to make you an offer. Both will change your life. You can walk away from either or both. No hard feelings. But once we start this conversation, we finish it. Understood? He nodded. His father had been the same way, economical with words, generous with attention. I laid it out, all of it. Isabel's betrayal, the trust, the nuclear option, his inheritance, of everything I'd built. I showed him documents, recordings, evidence of a daughter's greed and a father's response. He listened without interrupting, processing, calculating, understanding. When I finished, he set down his coffee cup with careful precision. Why me? He asked. You have cousins, business partners. Why Thomas Crane's son? Because blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. Your father understood that. He died knowing I'd look after you. And you've proven you didn't need looking after. That's rare. This will destroy your relationship with Isabel. That relationship is already dead. She killed it. I'm just handling the funeral arrangements. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city his father had loved and never gotten to conquer. The conditions, he asked, simple. Build something. Not just maintain what I leave you. Grow it. Use it. Make it matter. And when the time comes, choose your successor as carefully as I'm choosing mine. What about Isabel? She'll be taken care of. There's a small trust, enough to live on if she's careful. Not enough to live like she's expecting. She'll have to work. Maybe for the first time in her life. He turned from the window. I saw his father in his eyes, but also something else. Hunger. The same hunger I'd had at his age. The kind that builds empires. I accept, he said. We shook hands. In that moment, 30 years of work found its heir. Not the one I'd created, but the one I'd chosen. The lawyers worked through the night. By morning, papers were filed, assets were moved, trusts were restructured. The Harrington Trust, named for Catherine's maiden name, invisible to anyone who didn't know to look, now held everything. Every property, every investment, every carefully accumulated dollar. And Elias Crane was its sole beneficiary upon my death or incapacitation. The nuclear option was even more elegant. If Isabel contested anything, the will, the trust, my competency, everything would automatically transfer to the Gold Foundation for Financial Literacy, a charity I'd established years ago, teaching kids from my old neighborhood about compound interest and patient capital. She could accept her small trusts and walk away, or she could fight and lose everything. Knowing Isabel, she'd fight. Pride would demand it, and pride would destroy her. The call from Henderson came at 3 that afternoon. It's done. Everything. Iron-clad. Good. Now we wait, she. Find out eventually. I'm counting on it. But by then, it'll be too late. You can't contest what you can't find. And you can't fight what's already gone. I poured myself a whiskey, watched the sun set over Manhattan. Somewhere out there, my daughter was still plotting. Still believing she'd won. Still counting money that had already vanished like morning mist. The recording played in my mind. Her voice, casual as commerce, discussing my disposal. No hesitation. No regret. No love. Well, she taught me something valuable. That sometimes the greatest betrayal is to see someone clearly. And the greatest revenge is to act on what you see. Tomorrow, she'd probably call. Play the dutiful daughter. Test the waters for her grand plan. I'd play along. The confused old man. The lonely father. The easy mark. But tonight, in the gathering dark, I knew the truth. The money she'd spent her life expecting. The inheritance she'd considered her birthright. The future she'd planned on the grave of my dignity. All of it was already gone. She'd moved to checkmate me, but I'd already left the board. The irony was perfect. She'd worried so much about me losing my mind that she'd never noticed she'd lost my heart. And in the end, the heart controls the hand that signs the checks. Or in this case, the hand that stopped signing them. The city glowed beneath me. Millions of lights, millions of lives, millions of small betrayals and smaller dreams. But only one that mattered to me now. My daughter had chosen money over family, greed over gratitude, comfort over conscience. Now she'd learned that choices have consequences, and some consequences last forever. The wine she'd brought sat unopened on my desk. Chateau Margaux, 1996, the year we'd married. She'd probably Googled expensive wine and picked the first result. No thought to the significance. No awareness of the memory. I opened it, poured a glass, raised it to Catherine's portrait on the wall. Here's to clarity, my love, and to the courage to act on it. The wine was perfect. Complex, layered, improved by age and patience. Everything my daughter had never learned to be. Outside, the city hummed its eternal song. Inside, I sat with my whiskey and my certainty, knowing that tomorrow the war would begin in earnest. But tonight, I'd already won. The beauty of true preparation is that it happens in silence. While Isabel plotted in restaurants and consulted lawyers in glass towers, I moved through shadows she didn't know existed. The Harrington Trust had been my masterstroke, but it was only the beginning. Real victory requires redundancy. Backup plans for backup plans. Safeguards wrapped in safeguards. The kind of thorough preparation that turns possibility into inevitability. I started with the lawyers. Not just Henderson, though he remained. My field general. I assembled a team. Estate lawyers, tax attorneys, asset protection specialists. Men and women who billed more per hour than most people made in a week. Worth every penny. We met in a conference room 40 floors above Manhattan. No names on the door. No record of the meeting. Just 5 of the sharpest legal minds in New York gathered to build an impenetrable fortress around my fortune. Gentlemen, ladies, I began. My daughter is trying to have me declared incompetent. She's hired Melissa Hartwell. She's got a doctor ready to diagnose me with whatever she needs. She wants my money, and she's willing to destroy me to get it. They listened without judgment. These weren't moral philosophers. They were legal architects, and I was asking them to build me a bunker. The Harrington Trust is solid, Henderson said, filed under her mother's maiden name, completely separate from your personal assets. Even if she gets power of attorney over you, she can't touch it. What about discovery? Asked Chen, my tax attorney. If they dig deep enough, they won't find it. I built it through 7 shell companies across 3 jurisdictions. The paper trail would take years to unravel, and that's if they knew where to start looking. The nuclear option. This from Williams, the asset protection specialist. I smiled. If she contests anything, the will, the trust, my competency, everything automatically transfers to charity. A poison pill that makes fighting me financial suicide. Elegant, Williams murmured, but we should add layers. What about your personal assets? The ones she knows about. Those were the bait, the visible wealth, the houses, the cars, the obvious investments. Together, worth maybe 800,000, enough to look substantial. Not enough to reveal the real fortune hidden beneath. We leave those exposed, I said. Let her think that's the prize. While she's fighting for scraps, the real meal is already in someone else's stomach. We spent 6 hours building additional fortifications, irrevocable trusts, offshore structures, legal mechanisms that would activate like landmines if anyone tried to contest my decisions. By the end, I created a financial fortress that would make Fort Knox look like a piggy bank. But legal preparation was only half the battle. I needed evidence, documentation, Proof that I wasn't the doddering fool my daughter planned to paint me as. That's where Dr. Sarah Chen came in. Not the Chen from my legal team. This one was a neurologist at Mount Sinai, one of the best in the city. More importantly, one of the most ethical. I need a complete cognitive evaluation, I told her. Memory tests, brain scans, the works. I need documentation that I'm completely competent. Are you experiencing symptoms? She asked, concerned. Only the symptom of having a greedy daughter. She's planning to have me declared incompetent. I need proof that I'm not. Dr. Chen's evaluation took 2 days. Every test known to medical science, Mr. Izzet showed a brain functioning better than most 30-year-olds. Cognitive assessments that I aced, memory tests that revealed what she called exceptional recall and processing speed. Your brain is remarkable, she told me. No signs of decline, no indication of future issues. You could run a Fortune 500 company for another 20 years. I need that in writing, notarized multiple copies. She provided them. Medical records that would destroy any attempt to paint me as incompetent. Dated, stamped, and unimpeachable. Next came the surveillance. Not on Isabel Marcus, already had that covered. On myself, I hired a private security firm to document my daily activities, every morning run, every business meeting, every social engagement. Time-stamped, video-recorded proof of a man in full command of his faculties. It felt paranoid. It was paranoid. But paranoia is just preparation when someone's actually out to get you. The firm was run by ex-Mossad. They understood the assignment immediately. You want evidence of competency, the lead operative said. In case someone challenges your mental state. Exactly. I want every day documented, every decision recorded. Build me an archive that proves I'm exactly who I say I am. They did more than that. They installed cameras in my home office, recorded every phone call, created a digital fortress of evidence that would bury any competency challenge under an avalanche of proof. But the most important preparation happened with Elias. If I was going to leave him everything, he needed to be ready. Not just financially. Anyone can inherit money. He needed to understand how to keep it, how to grow it, how to use it as a tool rather than a trophy. We met every morning at 6. My study became a classroom. 30 years of knowledge compressed into intensive sessions. First lesson. I told him that first morning. Money is like water. It flows toward value. Create value, and money follows. Chase money, and it evaporates. He took notes, asked questions, challenged assumptions. His mind was like his father's, quick, analytical, never satisfied with surface answers. Why real estate? He asked one morning, reviewing my portfolio. Because they're not making more land. Supply and demand in its purest form. Plus, real estate is patient capital. It doesn't panic in downturns. It waits. We covered everything. Tax strategies that turned liabilities into assets. Investment philosophies that prioritized compound growth over quick gains. The psychology of negotiation. The art of reading people. The science of patience. But more than tactics, I taught him philosophy. The code I'd lived by, the principles that had taken me from Queens to Park Avenue. Never invest in anything you don't understand, I told him. Complexity is where money goes to die. Keep it simple. Keep it clear. Keep it boring. Boring. He looked skeptical. Boring is beautiful. Exciting investments make great stories and poor returns. You want investments that are so dull they put you to sleep while making you rich. He absorbed it all. But more importantly, he understood the weight of what I was giving him. This wasn't just money. It was responsibility, legacy, the obligation to do something meaningful with unearned advantage. One morning, he surprised me with a question I hadn't expected. Why didn't you teach this to Isabel? I set down my coffee, looked at this young man who was becoming the son I'd never had. I tried, but you can't teach someone who thinks they already know everything. Isabel never wanted to learn the business. She wanted to inherit it. There's a difference. She's still your daughter, yes. And that's why she'd be taken care of. She have enough to live comfortably if she's careful. But comfort and control are different things. She wants control. She'll get comfort. What if she changes? What if losing everything makes her better? Then she builds something of her own, and it will mean more because she earned it. But I'm not holding my breath. We moved on to advanced strategies. international markets, currency hedging, the delicate dance of political influence and financial power, things they don't teach at Wharton because the professors don't know them. But the most important lessons were about people. Money reveals character, I told him. It doesn't change people. It amplifies who they already are. Generous people become philanthropists. Selfish people become monsters. Weak people become victims. Which am I? He asked. You're your father's son. Steady, thoughtful, disciplined. Money will make you more of those things. Use that. The weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Legal documents filed. Medical records secured. Evidence accumulated. Knowledge transferred, all while Isabel continued her charade, calling every Sunday with fake concern and real greed. Daddy, how are you feeling? She'd ask, and I could hear her taking mental notes. Any confusion? Any forgetfulness? I'm fine, sweetheart. Though I did forget where I put my reading glasses yesterday. Where were they? On my head. Silly me. I could practically hear her typing, adding to her file, building her case, never realizing I was feeding her exactly what she wanted to hear. Small admissions that meant nothing but would make her overconfident. Let her think I was slipping. Let her believe her plan was working. Sun Tzu wrote about appearing weak when you are strong. I was giving her a master class in the principle. Meanwhile, the Harrington Trust grew teeth. Henderson added provision after provision. If anyone accessed my medical records without authorization, automatic transfer to charity. If anyone filed for conservatorship, automatic transfer. If anyone even breathed the word incompetent in a legal document, automatic transfer. It's bulletproof. Henderson assured me she could hire every lawyer in New York and not crack this. What about federal judges? State Supreme Court, built-in appeals that would take decades. By the time they sorted it out, the money would be so deeply embedded in charitable foundations that extracting it would be impossible. And Elias protected his inheritance is structured through 17 different vehicles. Even if they somehow pierced one, the others would hold. He'll get what you're leaving him. I stood at my window, watching the city pulse with ambition and avarice. Somewhere out there, my daughter was meeting with lawyers, showing them spreadsheets, planning my future without my input. But I'd already planned hers. The preparation was complete. Legal fortifications that would withstand any assault. Medical documentation that would destroy any competency claim. A successor trained and ready to carry the torch. Evidence that would bury any challenge under an avalanche of fact. All that remained was the execution. The moment when Isabel would discover that her father, the doddering old fool she'd written off, had been playing chess while she'd been playing checkers. The phone rang. Marcus, she's filed the preliminary paperwork, he said. Power of attorney forms. Medical directives. All waiting for your signature or a court order. So it begins. You ready? I've been ready for 3 years. She's the one who's unprepared. Want me to keep eyes on her? No. Let her move freely. Let her think. She's unwatched. Overconfidence is her weakness. Let's not cure her of it. I hung up and poured a whiskey. The good stuff. The kind you drink when you're about to win a war. Preparation is invisible until it's revealed. Then it's insurmountable. Isabel thought she'd been preparing to take my fortune. She didn't realize I'd been preparing to protect it. The difference between us was simple. She prepared for what she wanted to happen. I prepared for what I knew would happen. And now, with everything in place, all that remained was to let her walk into the trap she'd helped me build. The whiskey burned perfectly. Outside, night fell over Manhattan like a curtain on the first act. The second act was about to begin, and I already knew how it would end. The night I made Elias Crane my heir. Manhattan wore a fog like a pearl necklace. The city softened at the edges, buildings becoming suggestions, lights turning to halos. Perfect weather for changing destinies. I'd invited him for 8 o'clock. Dinner first. Dray-aged ribeye from my favorite butcher. 1982 Chateau Latour. From the cellar, conversation carefully casual. But we both knew this wasn't about food. Elias arrived precisely on time. That was his way. Never early, never late. Always exactly where he should be, when he should be there. He wore a simple, gray suit, well-tailored, but not flashy. His father would have been proud. Richard, he said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm, dry, confident, without trying to prove anything. We ate in the dining room, the same table where Isabel had performed her false concern just weeks ago. But with Elias, there was no performance. Just two men sharing a meal, and the comfortable silence that comes from mutual respect. "Your father loved this wine," I said, pouring the liqueur. It tasted like drinking history. He was right. Though he also said that about the cheap stuff when he was trying to impress women. We both laughed. Thomas Crane had been many things. Brilliant lawyer, loyal friend, terrible romantic. His death at 45 had been a waste of potential that still angered me a decade later. After dinner, we moved to the study. I poured cognac, Louis XIII, because some conversations deserve the best. We sat in leather chairs that had held 3 generations of serious discussions. Jazz played softly. Miles Davis, Kind of Blue, music for contemplation and decision. "I have something to discuss with you," I began. "Something that will change your life. You can say no, you can walk away, but I need you to hear me out completely." He nodded, setting down his cognac, giving me his full attention the way his father used to. The Crane men knew how to listen. "I'm leaving you everything," I said. "No preamble, no build-up. Just truth, clean and sharp. My entire estate, $5 million, plus properties, plus investments, all of it." He didn't flinch, didn't gasp, didn't do any of the things most people would when offered a fortune. He just watched me, processing, thinking. Why? One word, the right word. "Because you're the son I should have had. Because your father would have wanted it. Because you've earned it by being everything my daughter isn't. She's your blood. Blood doesn't make family. Loyalty does. Character does. Isabel has my DNA, but none of my values. You have your father's DNA and all of his honor. That matters more." He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the fog-shrouded city. I let him think. This wasn't a decision to make lightly. "What are the conditions?" he asked, finally. "Simple. Live with discipline. Build something meaningful. Use the money as a tool, not a toy. And when your time comes, pass it on to someone worthy, not necessarily blood. Someone who understands that wealth is responsibility, not privilege." What about Isabel? She receive a trust. 50,000 a year. Enough to live on if she's careful. Not enough to live like she's expecting. She'll have to work. Maybe for the first time, she'll fight this. She'll try. But I've prepared for that. If she contests anything, she loses everything. The nuclear option, fight me, and the money goes to charity. All of it. He turned from the window. In the lamplight, he looked older than his 35 years. The weight of decision aging him in real time. "This will destroy your relationship with her. That relationship is already destroyed. She destroyed it when she decided I was an obstacle instead of a father. When she started shopping for cages to put me in. When she hired doctors to diagnose me with diseases I don't have. I told him everything then. The recording from La Bernardine, the meeting with Morrison, the facility she'd already reserved, the conspiracy to steal not just my money, but my dignity." He listened without interrupting, taking it in, understanding not just what I was offering, but why. "Your father was my best friend," I continued. "When he died, I promised I'd look after you. But you never needed looking after. You built your own success, made your own way. That's why you deserve this. Not because you need it, but because you don't." "The irony," he said softly. Exactly. The people who deserve wealth are usually the ones who don't chase it. The ones who chase it rarely deserve it." He sat back down, picked up his cognac, swirled it thoughtfully. "Tell me about the business. The real business. Not what's in the reports." So I did. For 3 hours, I laid out everything. The investment philosophy that had built my fortune. The relationships that mattered. The mistakes I'd made and learned from. The opportunities I saw coming. He asked intelligent questions, probed weak points, challenged assumptions. His mind worked like a Swiss watch, precise, reliable, never stopping. "The real estate portfolio," he said. "You're heavy on commercial, with remote work trending already pivoting, converting to buildings to mixed use. Sold a pure office. Plays last year, you're thinking right. The international holdings. Seems risky with current geopolitics, only if you're emotional. Politics change. Fundamentals don't. People need food, shelter, security. Invest in necessities, not narratives. We talked until midnight. Business became philosophy. Philosophy became personal. By the end, I'd shared more with him than I'd ever shared with Isabel, because he could hear it, understand it, honor it. I'll need time to think, he said finally. Of course, but not too much time. Isabel is moving fast. Once she files for conservatorship, things get complicated. I need pieces in place before that happens. How long do I have? 48 hours. Then we need to start transfers. He stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. Your father would have hated this, he said. You having to choose between blood and merit? My father sold insurance to people who couldn't afford it. He would have understood survival. This is just a different kind. After he left, I sat alone with the remnants of our evening. Empty glasses, full ashtrays, the echo of honest conversation. The phone rang. Isabel, hi Daddy, just checking in. How was your evening? Quiet, watched some television. Early to bed. Good. You need your rest. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about maybe getting some help around the house. Someone to check in on you. The first probe. Testing defenses. Seeing how I'd react to the suggestion of monitoring. That's thoughtful, sweetheart. But Marcus handles everything I need. Still, a professional caregiver might be better. Someone with medical training. For a man who ran 3 miles that morning and could still beat most 30-year-olds at tennis. But I played along. Perhaps you're right. Let me think about it. I actually have some names. Excellent agencies. We could meet with them together. We already inserting herself into decisions. Already testing control. Send me the information. I'll review it, or I could just set up the meetings. Save you the trouble. No trouble at all. I enjoy having things to do. Silence. I could feel her recalibrating, wondering if she'd pushed too hard too fast. Of course, I'll email you tomorrow. Love. You, Daddy. Love you too, sweetheart. A lie, but a necessary one. Let her think the bond still held. Let her believe I was the trusting father she remembered. Sun Tzu, again, all warfare is deception. The next morning, Elias called. I'm in, he said without preamble. Whatever you need, however you want to structure it. I'm in. You're sure? This isn't reversible. Once we start time, sure. My father used to say that life offers you maybe 3 moments of real choice. Moments that define everything after. This is one of them. Your father was a smart man. He also said Richard Gold plays the long game. That if you're making me this offer, you've already thought through every angle. I trust that. Trust. Such a small word for such a large concept. But he was right to give it. I had thought through every angle, planned for every contingency, built safeguards around safeguards. Come by tomorrow. Bring identification. Multiple forms. We'll start the paperwork. Should I bring a lawyer? You could, but Henderson will be handling everything. Unless you don't. Trust him. I trust your judgment. If you say he's solid, he's solid. He's been my lawyer for 20 years. He's structured deals that would make your head spin. And he's never once betrayed a confidence. Then now come alone smart. The fewer people who know, the better. Isabel has eyes everywhere. Speaking of which, should I be concerned about surveillance? Always be concerned. But don't be paranoid. Live your life normally. Just be aware that she might be watching. The next day, we signed papers that transferred a fortune. Henderson had outdone himself. 17 different trusts, each feeding into the next like Russian dolls, each protected by provisions that would make them lawsuit-proof. The beautiful part, Henderson explained, is the timing mechanisms. Even if someone contests, the transfers continue. Money keeps flowing to the designated beneficiary during any legal challenge. By the time a court could rule, the assets would be so distributed that unwinding would be impossible. Elias signed where indicated. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Just the steady confidence of a man who understood the weight of what he was accepting. There's one more thing, I said when the papers were complete. A letter, to be opened when I die. Instructions, advice, warnings, things you'll need to know. Handed him the envelope. Heavy paper, wax seal. Old-fashioned call came at 7 in the morning. Marcus, Not bothering with pleasantries. She's at the bank, trying to access the investment accounts. They've locked her out. Good. That means Henderson filed the restrictions. She have lawyers with her, too, and they don't look happy. They're about to get less happy. Stay on her. I showered, dressed carefully. Today, required armor. Charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, Harvard tie. The uniform of unassailable competence. If Isabel wanted to play competency games, I'd show her what competence looked like. By 9. My phone was buzzing. Isabel, I let it go to voicemail. Then again, then texts. The increasing frequency told me everything. Panic was setting. Finally, at 10:30, I answered. There seems to be some kind of mistake, she said without preamble. The bank won't give me access to review the family accounts. What family accounts? I asked, playing dumb. The investment portfolios. The ones Mom set up. I have power of attorney. No, you don't. Your mother's been dead for 3 years, Isabel. Any power of attorney died with her. But I need to review them. For planning purposes. Planning for what? For, for your future care. Making sure everything is in order. My affairs are in perfect order. Have been for years. No review necessary. Daddy, I don't think you understand. There are significant assets that need oversight. I understand perfectly. Those assets have oversight. Mine. Is there something else you need? Silence. I could hear her. Breathing, fast and shallow. The sound of plans crumbling. I'm coming over, she said finally. We need to talk. I'll be here. She arrived at noon, and she wasn't alone. Brad, of course, trying to look imposing in his tech bro casual wear. But also a woman in a severe suit carrying a briefcase. Melissa Hartwell, I presumed. The elder law specialist who thought she could put me in a box. I met them in the formal living room, the one with Catherine's portrait dominating the wall. Let my dead wife watch what her daughter had become. Daddy, Isabel started, trying for warmth. This is Melissa Hartwell. She's been helping me understand some of the legal complexities around estate planning. Ms. Hartwell, I didn't offer my hand, and you're here because the lawyer stepped forward, all professional smile and read at her eyes. Mr. Gold, your daughter has some concerns about your well-being. She's asked me to help ensure your assets are properly protected. From whom? I asked. From what? I'm not aware of any threats to my assets. From potential future incapacity, she said smoothly. At your age, it's prudent to have safeguards in place. I'm 58, not 90. My father lived to 87, his father to 92. I've got good genes and better habits. But thank you for your concern. Brad decided to contribute. Richard, we're just trying to help. Isabel's worried about you living alone, managing everything by yourself. I turned my gaze on him, noted the Rolex he was wearing, the one I'd bought Isabel for her 30th birthday. Already redistributing assets. Brad, is it? Tell me, what qualifies you to assess my capacity for self-management? Your expertise in cryptocurrency, your 3 failed startups, or perhaps your recent bankruptcy filing? His face went red. Isabel's went white. How did you know about the bankruptcy? The same way I know about your 2 previous divorces, your gambling debts, and your interesting interpretation of SEC regulations. I make it my business to know who's in my daughter's life, especially when they start showing up to discussions about my money. Daddy. Isabel's mask slipped for just a moment, showing the fury beneath. You need to leave, I said to Brad. This is a family matter. I'm her husband. I have a right to have no rights in my house. Leave, or I'll have Marcus escort you out. And trust me, you don't want Marcus to escort you anywhere. He looked at Isabel, who nodded tightly. After he slunk out, I turned back to the women. Now then, what's this really about? Hartwell tried to regain control. Mr. Gold, there have been some concerns raised about your recent behavior. Forgetfulness, confusion, difficulty managing daily tasks. Raised by whom? That's confidential. No, it's not. If you're making accusations about my mental state, I have a right to face my accusers. So I'll ask again, raised by whom? Isabel shifted uncomfortably. Some friends at the club, staff here at the house, people who care about you. Name them. What? Name these concerned friends? Name the staff members. Be specific. Silence. Because there were no names, no concerned friends, No worried staff. Just lies built on lies, I see. So anonymous sources claim I'm incompetent. Tell me, Ms. Hartwell, do anonymous accusations typically hold up in court? Mr. Gold, there's no need for hostility. We're here to help. I stood, walked to my desk, retrieved a folder I'd prepared for this moment. Let me show you something, Ms. Hartwell. My medical records from last month. Complete cognitive evaluation by Dr. Sarah Chen at Mount Sinai. MRI results. Memory testing. Psychological assessment. All showing exceptional function for any age. Would you like to review them? I dropped the folder on the coffee table. Hartwell's eyes widened slightly. There's also this. Records of every business transaction I've conducted this year. Complex negotiations. International deals. The kind of decisions that require not just competence, but exceptional judgment. Still think I'm confused? Those could be in this. I produced another folder. Security footage from my home. Time-stamped. Showing me conducting business, exercising, reading, hosting dinner parties. Living a fully functional life. Where is the incapacity? Daddy, Isabel tried. You don't understand what we're trying to... Do I understand perfectly? You're trying to have me declared incompetent so you can control my assets. You've already got a doctor lined up, Morrison, isn't it? Already picked out a facility, Avalon Gardens, correct? Already calculated. How long it would take to liquidate everything? 6 months, according to your timeline. The color drained from her face completely. How do you know about the same way I know about your Wednesday lunch at La Bernardine, where you discussed having me declared incompetent, where you planned to steal my money and cage me like an animal? I have the recording, if you'd like to hear it. Hartwell stood. This meeting is over. Isabel, we should go sit down, both of you. We're not done. Something in my voice made them comply. The command tone I'd used to build an empire. The voice that brooked no argument. Let me explain. What's going to happen now? You're going to leave my house. You're going to abandon this pathetic scheme. You're going to stop trying to steal what you haven't earned. Because if you don't, I'll destroy you. Daddy, I'm not finished. Ms. Hartwell, are you familiar with the concept of criminal conspiracy? Plotting to defraud someone of their assets through false medical claims. The recordings I have of your meetings would interest the district attorney. Your career would be over. You'd be disbarred, possibly imprisoned. You're threatening me. I'm informing you of consequences. There's a difference. I turned to Isabel and you, my daughter. My blood, do you know what you've lost today? I haven't lost anything. You're being paranoid. This is exactly the behavior we're concerned about. You've lost everything. You just don't know it yet. I walked to the window, looked out at the city I'd conquered, gave them my back, showing how little they threatened me. There's something you should know, Isabel. 3 years ago, after your mother died, I restructured everything, created new trusts, changed beneficiaries, built walls around my wealth that you'll never breach. What are you talking about? The money you're counting, it's already gone. Transferred to trusts you can't find, and names you don't know. Protected by provisions you can't break. You could hire every lawyer in New York and never touch a penny. You can't do that. I'm your daughter. I have rights. You had rights. You traded them for greed, sold them for schemes, sacrificed them on the altar of avarice. This is insane. You are insane. This paranoia, this persecution complex, it's exactly why you need help. Is it? Tell me. What's more insane, protecting my assets from a daughter who's actively trying to steal them, or thinking you could plot against me in restaurants and I wouldn't find out? I walked back to them, stood over them, let them feel the weight of what they'd awakened. Here's what happens now. You leave. You don't come back. You abandon any plans to challenge my competency. In exchange, I'll allow you to keep receiving your monthly allowance. $50,000 a year. Enough to live on if you're careful. 50,000. That's nothing. It's 50,000 more than you deserve. Take it or leave it, and if I fight this, if I challenge these mysterious trusts, then you trigger what I call the nuclear option. Every penny automatically transfers to charity. Not eventually, immediately. You don't just lose the case. You lose everything. Forever. You're bluffing, Ms. Hartwell. I produced a final document. Ask your client if I'm bluffing. This is the filing for the Harrington Trust. Note the date. 3 years ago. Note the provisions. Automatic charitable transfer upon any legal challenge. It's ironclad, Hartwell. read quickly, her face growing paler with each paragraph. This is, ... How did you, ... This is bulletproof, ... I don't do anything halfway, including disinheriting ungrateful children. Isabel snatched the document, read it, reread it. I watched understanding dawn like a horrible sunrise. Harrington, Mom's maiden name. You hid it under Mom's name. Your mother saw this coming. On her deathbed, she warned me, told me to watch you. To protect myself, I should have listened sooner. This isn't fair. I'm your daughter. You were my daughter. Now you're just someone who looks like her. Someone who plotted to cage me, who brought lawyers and doctors and bureaucrats to steal what I built. That's not a daughter. That's a parasite. You can't just cut me off. I can. I have. It's done. The only question now is whether you walk away with $50,000 a year or nothing at all. Your choice? Hartwell touched Isabel's arm. We should go. Fighting this would be ... inadvisable. Shut up. Isabel turned on her lawyer. You said this would work. You said he was vulnerable. I said if he was incompetent, we could proceed. He's clearly not incompetent. He's possibly the most competent client I've ever faced. They gathered their things. At the door, Isabel turned back, tears on her face, but not of sadness. Of rage. You'll regret this. You'll die alone. No family. No one who loves you. I have family, just not you. And I'd rather die alone than live in whatever cage you prepared for me. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You just haven't accepted it yet. Goodbye, Isabel. Don't come back. After they left, I poured a whiskey with hands that didn't shake. The confrontation I'd planned for 3 years had finally happened. The daughter I'd lost long ago was finally gone for good. Marcus appeared in the doorway. You all right? Better than all right. Free. For the first time in years. Free. What now? Now we wait. She raged. She schemed. She probably tried to contest the trust. And when she does, she lose everything. The nuclear option doesn't. Leave survivors. And Elias continues his training. Continues preparing. Continues becoming the heir I should have had from the start. I raised my glass to Catherine's portrait. Your daughter just learned what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. When you assume age means inability. When you declare war on someone who's been fighting longer than you've been alive. The turning point had come and gone. The battle was won before it began. All that remained was for Isabel to realize she'd already lost. But knowing her, that realization would cost her everything. Pride always does. Henderson called at 6 a.m, 2 weeks after the confrontation. His voice had the careful tone of a man delivering explosives. She's filed, he said. Full competency challenge. Hartwell backed out, but she found new counsel. Steinman and Associates. Steinman, I knew the firm. Ambulance chasers with delusions of grandeur. They'd take any case if the potential payout was high enough. Let me guess. Contingency basis. They only get paid if they win. 40%. They're swinging for the fences. Then let's show them what happens when you swing at a pitcher who knows how to throw. There's more. They've filed for emergency conservatorship, claiming you're a danger to yourself. That the paranoid accusations against Isabel prove mental deterioration. Beautiful. She's using my accurate assessment of her betrayal as evidence of incompetence. The irony is almost poetic. They've got affidavits. 3 people claiming to have witnessed cognitive decline. Names: Dr. Morrison, of course, plus 2 others, a James Patterson, who claims to be a family friend, and a Maria Santos, who says she was household staff. Patterson, there's that name again. The fictional friend from the club, and Maria Santos. Check the employee records. I bet we've never had anyone by that name. Already did. No Maria Santos. No employment records. No W-2 South. No payments. She's as real as Patterson. So they're building their case on lies. Document everything. This isn't just about protecting assets. Anymore, this is about criminal fraud. The hearing is set for next month. Judge Catherine Willis. Willis, I knew her by reputation. Fair but tough. Didn't suffer fools or frauds. This would be interesting. Perfect. Send me everything they file. Every document, every claim, every lie they tell. We're going to give them enough rope to hang themselves. There's one more thing. The nuclear option. Are you sure you want to proceed if they persist? They're not going to stop, Henderson. You know that. Isabel's burned through her trust already. I had Marcus check. She's desperate. Desperate people don't retreat. They double down. Then we need to prepare for total war. We've been preparing for 3 years. Time to see if our fortifications hold. The next few weeks were a masterclass in legal destruction. Steinman and Associates filed motion after motion, each more desperate than the last. They claimed I was suffering from paranoid delusions about my daughter, that my obsessive security measures proved mental decline, that my restructuring of assets showed irrational behavior patterns consistent with dementia. Every claim they made, we countered with evidence. They said I was paranoid. We produced a recording from La Bernardine. They claimed I was confused. We submitted business deals I'd negotiated that month, complex transactions requiring absolute clarity. They suggested I couldn't manage daily tasks. We provided video footage of me running my morning 3 miles, hosting dinner parties, managing million-dollar portfolios. But the real beauty was letting them dig their own grave with the false affidavits. Henderson was in his element. Richard, this is better than Christmas. They've submitted sworn statements from people who don't exist. That's perjury, fraud, conspiracy. We could have them all arrested. Not yet. Let them present their case. Let them stand in open court and swear to lies. Then we destroy them. 3 days before the hearing, Elias came by for a morning session. He'd been following the case, understanding that his inheritance hung in the balance. You seem calm, he observed. Your daughter's trying to destroy you, and you're sitting here teaching me about municipal bonds. Because I've already won. She just doesn't know it yet. This hearing isn't about protecting my assets. Those are already protected. It's about teaching a final lesson, which is that consequences are real, that actions have reactions, that when you declare war on someone who's been preparing for peace, you lose everything. We spent the morning reviewing international tax strategies. I was teaching him things that had taken me decades to learn, compressed into intensive sessions. He absorbed it all, asked the right questions, made connections I hadn't expected. You're ready, I told him as our session ended. More ready than I was at your age. Whatever happens in court, remember, the money is just a tool. What matters is what you build with it. What will you do if she wins? If somehow she breaks through all your defenses, then I'll have the satisfaction of watching her trigger the nuclear option. $5 million instantly transferring to charity, her victory turning to ash in her mouth. There's a certain poetry to it. You'd really do it. Give everything away rather than let her have it, in a heartbeat, because it was never about the money. It was about what the money represented. The work, the sacrifice, the discipline. She wants the result without the process. That's not how life works. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully. Navy suit, understated. Nothing flashy. Let competence speak for itself. Marcus drove me to the courthouse. Isabel was already there with her legal team. She'd lost weight, her face drawn with stress and greed. She looked at me with such hatred. I almost felt sorry for her. Judge Willis's courtroom was old New York. Wood paneling, high ceilings, the weight of justice in every beam. I sat with Henderson and his team. Isabel sat across the aisle with Steinman and 2 associates. All rise, the bailiff called. The Honorable Catherine Willis presiding. Judge Willis was 70, if she was a day. Sharp eyes behind steel-rimmed glasses. The kind of judge who'd seen every scam, every scheme, every family dysfunction that money could buy. We're here on the matter of gold versus gold, she began. A competency hearing and request for emergency conservatorship. Mr. Steinman, you may proceed. Steinman was everything I'd expected. Cheap suit, expensive watch. The hunger of a man who saw dollar signs instead of justice. He painted a picture of me as a paranoid old man, clinging to control, imaging conspiracies where none existed. My client, he intoned, has watched her father deteriorate into paranoid delusions. He's accused her of elaborate plots. He's cut her off from family assets based on fantasies of persecution. This is textbook dementia-related paranoia. He presented the affidavits, Morrison swearing he'd observed cognitive decline, the fictional Patterson and Santos confirming my confusion and memory issues, a careful construction of lies designed to paint me as incompetent. Your Honor, Steinman continued, We request immediate conservatorship to protect Mr. Gold from himself and preserve family assets he's attempting to dissipate in his confused state. Judge Willis took notes, her face revealing nothing. Then she turned to Henderson. Counselor, your response. Henderson stood slowly, 30 years of courtroom experience in every movement. Your Honor, I'd like to start by presenting Exhibit A, recent medical evaluations of Mr. Gold by 3 independent physicians, including full cognitive assessment, all showing exceptional mental function. He handed the documents to the clerk. Judge Willis reviewed them, eyebrows rising slightly. Exhibit B, security footage from Mr. Gold's home, showing him conducting complex business transactions, hosting social gatherings, and maintaining an active lifestyle inconsistent with the claimed incompetence. More documents, more evidence, each piece building an unassailable wall of competence. But, Your Honor, the most important evidence relates to the affidavit submitted by opposing counsel, Mr. James Patterson, who claims to be a family friend who witnessed Mr. Gold's confusion at their club. Yes. Judge Willis leaned forward. There is no James Patterson at Mr. Gold's club. There never has been. We've checked membership records going back 30 years. This person doesn't exist. Steinman jumped up. That's preposterous. We have a sworn affidavit from a fictional person. Henderson smiled coldly. Just as you have an affidavit from Maria Santos, who allegedly worked in the Gold household. Our employment records show no such person. No W-2s, no payments, no evidence she ever existed. Judge Willis's eyes turned to steel. Mr. Steinman, are you telling me you've submitted false affidavits to this court? Your Honor, I was relying on information provided by my client, your client, so Ms. Gold provided these witnesses. That is, we need to verify, Sit down, Mr. Steinman. Judge Willis turned to me. Mr. Gold, please approach. I walked to the bench. Back straight, movements confident, no shuffling, no hesitation, no signs of the incompetence they'd claimed. Mr. Gold, do you know why your daughter has brought this action? Yes, Your Honor. I have evidence I'd like to present, if I may. Proceed. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the courtroom's audio system. The recording from La Bernardine filled the room. Isabel's voice, clear as crystal, plotting my destruction, planning to have me declared incompetent, discussing how to steal my assets. The courtroom was silent, except for Isabel's recorded words. Her face had gone from pale to gray. Your Honor, I said when it finished, my daughter didn't approach me with concern about my well-being. She plotted to steal my assets. When I discovered this and took steps to protect myself, she escalated too. This fraudulent competency hearing, Judge Willis looked at Isabel with disgust. Ms. Gold, is that your voice on the recording? Isabel couldn't speak. Steinman tried to object, but Willis silenced him with a gesture. Furthermore, Your Honor, I continued, in response to this threat, I've already taken protective action. 3 years ago, I established an irrevocable trust that places my assets beyond anyone's reach, including my daughter's. This hearing is moot. There's nothing to conserve, nothing to steal. You established this trust 3 years ago. Yes, after my wife's death, when I first noticed my daughter's interest in my mortality. I see the current status of your assets, fully protected, with one important provision. If anyone, including my daughter, attempts to contest the trust or my competency, all assets automatically transferred to charitable foundations. It's what I call the nuclear option. Judge Willis actually smiled. Clever, very clever. Mr. Gold, please return to your seat. I walked back, passing Isabel. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face. Not tears of sadness, tears of rage. In recognition, she finally understood what she'd lost. Judge Willis rendered her decision without even retiring to chambers. This court finds no evidence of incompetence on the part of Richard Gold. In fact, the evidence suggests exceptional mental acuity and appropriate protective responses to genuine threats. The petition for conservatorship is denied. She wasn't finished. Furthermore, this court is deeply troubled by the submission of false affidavits. Mr. Steinman, Ms. Gold, you are hereby referred to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of perjury and fraud. These are serious crimes with serious consequences. Your Honor, Steinman started. I'm not finished. Ms. Gold, you've wasted this court's time with a fraudulent claim motivated by greed. You've submitted false evidence. You've attempted to destroy your own father for financial gain. This court has rarely seen such a clear case of attempted elder abuse. Isabel sobbed. Real tears now. The tears of someone watching there carefully. Constructed plans crumble into dust. Mr. Gold, Judge Willis continued, you're free to go. And may I say, your preparations were masterful. This court wishes more people protected themselves so thoroughly. Thank you. Your Honor, as for you, Ms. Gold, I suggest you leave your father alone. Any further harassment will be met with restraining orders and criminal charges. Do you understand, Isabel? Nodded, unable to speak. Court is adjourned. In the hallway afterward, Isabel approached me one last time. Mascara running, designer dress wrinkled, the picture of defeat daddy. Please. I'm sorry, I was desperate. Brad left me. I have nothing. You have $50,000 a year. That's not nothing. It's more than most people ever see. It's not enough. Then earn more. Work, build something. Become someone worth investing in. You're really going to leave me with nothing else. I left you with what you earned. Nothing. The $50,000 is charity. Be grateful for it. What about forgiveness? What about second chances? You had second chances, third chances, 100th chances. You spent them all, so that's it. You're just going to give everything to Elias. Elias earned it by being everything. You weren't loyal, hardworking, grateful. He's the son I should have had. I'm your daughter. No, you're someone who shares my DNA. That's biology, not family. Family doesn't plot to cage you. Family doesn't hire doctors to declare you insane. Family doesn't try to steal what you built. She grabbed my arm. Please, I'll do anything. I'll change. I'll work for you. I'll prove myself. I removed her hand gently, but firmly. It's too late for that. You made your choice. Live with it. I walked away, leaving her crying in the courthouse hallway. The last time I'd ever see my daughter. The final closing of a door that had been shutting for years. In the car, Marcus glanced at me in the rearview mirror. You all right, boss? Better than all right. It's finished. All of it. The trust is secure. Elias is protected. Isabel is neutralized. For the first time in years, I can breathe. What if she tries again? Then she triggers the nuclear option and loses even the $50,000. She's smart enough to understand that. Greedy, but not stupid. That night, I met with Elias. Handed him a glass of the good whiskey. The transformation began immediately. With the legal battles settled and Isabel's threat neutralized, I could focus on what truly mattered, preparing Elias to carry the torch. Our morning sessions evolved from teaching to partnership. We reviewed deals together, analyzed markets as equals, built strategies as a team. The student was becoming the master, and I couldn't have been prouder. Today, we're visiting the properties. I announced one morning, you need to see what you're inheriting, not just on paper, but in person. Feel the weight of real assets. We started with the crown jewel, the Harrington Building on Madison Avenue. 40 stories of prime Manhattan real estate, acquired in 2008 when the world was ending and I was buying. Marcus drove us, navigating Manhattan traffic with his usual surgical precision. Elias studied the building as we approached, seeing it with new eyes. When did you buy it? He asked. October 2008. Markets in freefall. Everyone selling, nobody buying. The previous owner needed liquidity more than assets. I gave him cash. He gave me the future. We entered through the private entrance. The lobby was marble and mahogany, old money taste with new money maintenance. The kind of building that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. Occupancy rate. Elias was already thinking like an owner. 97%. Waiting list for prime floors. We're selective about tenants' quality over quantity. Better to have one excellent tenant than 3 mediocre ones. We toured the building from basement to penthouse. I introduced him to the property manager, the head of security, the chief engineer. Watched them size him up. This young man who would one day hold their futures. This is Elias Crane, I said simply. He'll be taking a more active role in property management. Treat him as you would treat me. They understood. These were smart people who recognized succession planning when they saw it. They'd work just as hard for Elias as they had for me, because that's what professionals do. The next stop was more personal. The warehouse in Queens, where it all began. I still owned it, though it generated minimal income. Some things you keep for reasons beyond money. This is where I stored the magazines. I told Elias as we walked through the dusty space. My first real business. Buying discarded magazines for pennies, selling them for dollars. Learning that inefficiency creates opportunity. Why keep it? The carrying costs must outweigh the income, because forgetting where you came from is the first step to losing where you're going. This building reminds me that everything started with hustle, with seeing value where others saw trash. That lesson is worth more than rent. We spent a day touring the empire. Office buildings, retail spaces, parking structures, self-storage facilities, the unsexy assets that generated steady returns while others chased shiny objects at each stop. I introduced Elias to key people, property managers, maintenance chiefs, long-term tenants, building his network, establishing his presence, transferring not just ownership but relationships. They respect you, he observed as we left our fifth property. They respect the position, the money, the power to make decisions that affect their lives. Your job is to earn personal respect on top of positional respect. That takes time, consistency, and competence. How long did it take you? Years. But I had to build from nothing. You're inheriting established relationships. That's an advantage. Don't waste it. That evening, we met with my core team, the inner circle that actually ran the empire while I made the big decisions. CFO, legal counsel, head of acquisitions, property management director, the people who turned vision into reality. Gentlemen, ladies, I began. You all know why we're here. Succession planning. Elias will be taking over when my time comes. I want that transition to be seamless. They studied him. He met their gazes steadily, understanding this was as much an interview as an introduction. Tell us about your vision, the CFO said. Where do you see the portfolio in 10 years? Elias had prepared for this. More geographically diverse, less concentrated. In Manhattan, more presence in emerging markets. Heavy emphasis on mixed-use properties that can adapt to changing needs. In a stronger position in logistics, warehouses, distribution centers. E-commerce is changing everything. Smart answers. Safe, but forward-thinking. Showing respect for what existed while signaling evolution. What about financing? The legal counsel asked. Your thoughts on leverage. Conservative, but not paranoid. Debt is a tool, not a strategy. Use it when it multiplies returns. Avoid it when it just multiplies risk. My father taught me that borrowed money has no loyalty. That earned nods. They were warming to him. The meeting continued for hours. By the end, I could see acceptance in their faces. Elias had passed the first test. He could speak their language, understand their concerns, respect their expertise. After they left, we sat alone in the conference room. How'd I do? He asked. Like you belonged here, what you do. But remember, they're testing you. We'll continue testing you. Every decision you make, every word you speak. They're evaluating whether you're worthy of what I'm leaving you. No pressure, all pressure. That's what leadership is. Pressure converted into decisions. Get comfortable with it. Over the following weeks, the transfer of knowledge accelerated. I gave him access to everything. Financial records going back decades. Contracts, correspondence, the real story behind every major deal. The victories and the failures. Because you learn more from what goes wrong than what goes right. We dissected my biggest mistakes. The hotel in Atlantic City that hemorrhaged money for 3 years. The tech investment that went to zero. The partner who embezzled $2 million before I caught him. Every failure had a lesson. Every loss taught something valuable. I made sure Elias understood not just what went wrong, but why, and how to avoid similar pitfalls. But we also studied the wins. The building bought for $2 million that was now worth 20. The parking garage everyone said was overpriced that generated more cash flow than any other asset. The boring investments that built wealth while exciting ones grabbed headlines. Pattern recognition, I told him. Success leaves clues. So does failure. Learn to see the patterns, and you can predict the outcomes. One morning, he surprised me with his own analysis. He'd spent the weekend reviewing our entire portfolio and had identified 3 properties he thought we should sell. Walk me through your thinking, I said. These buildings are in neighborhoods beginning to decline. Not obviously yet, but the indicators are there. Increased vacancy rates in surrounding properties, delayed maintenance on public infrastructure, The kind of subtle signals that precede larger problems. He was right. I'd been watching the same properties, coming to the same conclusions. But I wanted to hear his reasoning. So we sell into strength, before the decline becomes obvious. Exactly. Take the capital and redeploy into emerging areas. By the future, not the past. When do we move? I smiled at that. He was already thinking like an owner, not an heir. Within 6 months. Gives us time to maximize price without rushing. Never sell desperately. Good. Make it happen. He blinked me. You identified the opportunity. You developed a strategy. Execute it. I'll watch, advise if needed. But this is your operation. It was a test, of course, but also a transfer of real responsibility. He'd either succeed and build confidence, or fail and learn lessons. Either outcome would make him stronger. He succeeded, sold all 3 properties above asking price, reinvested the proceeds into an industrial complex in New Jersey that would triple in value within 2 years. Watching him negotiate, strategize, execute. It was like watching a younger version of myself, but better. He had advantages I'd never had. Education, capital, guidance. He used them all. The physical training continued alongside the financial education. Every morning, we ran together. 3 miles through Central Park, maintaining conversation while maintaining pace. Physical discipline reinforcing mental discipline. Your body is your first asset, I told him during one run. Everything else depends on it. Neglect it and nothing else matters. He matched my stride, decades younger, but respecting the pace I set. We ran in all-weather rain, snow, blazing heat. Conditions were irrelevant. Commitment was everything. After our runs, we'd practice presence. How to enter a room and own it without saying a word. How to sit at a negotiating table like you'd already won. How to project confidence without arrogance. Strength without aggression. Watch. I demonstrated during a meeting with potential buyers for one of our properties. See how I'm sitting? Relaxed but alert. Taking up space, but not aggressively. Hands visible, movements deliberate. Everything signals control. He absorbed it all. The subtle psychology of power. The nonverbal communication that often mattered. More than words. The art of making others come to you rather than chasing them. We attended charity galas together. I introduced them to the people who mattered. Not celebrities or politicians, but the quiet powers who actually moved money and made decisions. The invisible network that controlled visible outcomes. Elias Crane, I'd say. He's handling the Madison Avenue portfolio. Any questions about our properties? He's your contact. Slowly, I transferred not just knowledge and assets, but relationships and reputation, making him indispensable before he was officially in charge. One evening, after a particularly complex negotiation, where he'd saved us $2 million with a single observation, I pulled out a box I'd been saving. These were your father's, I said, opening it to reveal a set of vintage cufflinks. He wore them to every important meeting. Said they reminded him that details matter. Elias took them reverently. I remember these. He let me play with them when I was a kid. Told me they were magic. That they made good deals happen. They're yours now. Wear them when it matters. Remember him when you do. He put them on immediately. Though he was wearing a casual shirt, his father's presence suddenly filled the room, blessing this transfer of legacy from one generation to the next. The months passed in a blur of teaching, testing, and transition. Elias grew into his role like it had been tailored for him, which, in a way, it had. I'd been shaping this outcome for years, without fully realizing it. The team accepted him. The tenants respected him. The properties thrived under his increasingly independent management. What had started as succession planning was becoming successful succession. One morning, as we reviewed quarterly reports that showed record returns under his strategic adjustments, I made a decision. I'm stepping back. I announced, not out, but back. You'll handle day-to-day operations. Major decisions still require my approval, but everything else is yours. You sure? I mean, I'm ready, but you're ready because you think you might not be. Confidence is good. Overconfidence is fatal. You have the right balance. What will you do? What I should have done years ago. Live, travel, read books without checking my phone. Maybe write one myself. The business is in good hands. Your hands. Time for me to enjoy what I built instead of just building more. It wasn't retirement. Men like me don't retire. But it was transition. From builder to advisor. From owner to mentor. From doing to teaching. Elias took the reins smoothly. Within a month, he was making decisions I wouldn't have thought of. Within 3, he was improving on strategies I'd used for decades. The student hadn't just matched the teacher. He was surpassing him, which is exactly what should happen when succession is done right. I watched from a comfortable distance as he negotiated a complex acquisition using techniques I'd taught him but adding innovations I hadn't imagined. He was becoming not just my heir, but my evolution, taking what I'd built and making it better. One evening, he called with news of a successful deal, the biggest of his career so far. "We got it," he said, excitement breaking through his usual composure. "The whole portfolio, 20% below. Asking, they accepted our terms on everything. Outstanding. How do you feel?" "Like I'm standing on your shoulders. Everything I did in there, every move I made, I learned it from you. This is your victory as much as mine." "No, I taught you the notes. You wrote the symphony. This is yours. Own it." After we hung up, I poured myself a whiskey and toasted the empty room. To Thomas Crane, whose son had become mine. To Catherine, whose wisdom I'd finally heeded. To the future, which was in better hands than I dared hope. And yes, even to Isabel, whose betrayal had forced me to find a better heir than blood could provide. The new order was established. The empire would not just survive, it would thrive. Evolution, not just preservation. Growth, not just maintenance. Everything I'd built would continue building. That's all any man can ask for. That's more than most achieve. The king was dead. Long live the king, and this king had earned his crown. The diagnosis came on a Tuesday. Pancreatic cancer, stage 3. The kind of verdict that turns futures into past tense. Dr. Chen delivered it with the clinical precision I'd always appreciated. No sugarcoating, no false hope. Just facts, timelines, and options. 6 months, if we do nothing, she said. Maybe a year, with aggressive treatment. But Richard, at this stage, treatment might steal more life than it gives. Quality over quantity. I replied, always been my philosophy. No different now. I'd felt it coming for weeks. The fatigue that sleep couldn't cure. The weight loss despite normal appetite. The pain that whispered before it screamed. My body betraying me the way my daughter had, slowly at first, then all at once. I told no one initially. Sat with the knowledge like a secret lover, getting comfortable with mortality. Death didn't frighten me. I'd built everything worth building. Loved everyone worth loving. Lost what needed losing. What else was there but a graceful exit? But graceful exits require preparation. And I'd always been thorough. First, I updated my will one final time. Not the financial aspects, those were ironclad, but the personal touches. Letters to be delivered, instructions to be followed. The human elements that lawyers couldn't capture in whereas clauses. Then I told Marcus. He deserved to know first. 10 years of loyalty earned that much. We were in the car, returning from what would be my last visit to the Queen's warehouse. I'd wanted to see where it all began one more time. "I'm dying," I said simply. "Cancer. 6 months, give or take." He didn't swerve, didn't gasp. Just tightened his grip on the wheel imperceptibly. "How bad?" "Bad enough that I'm not fighting it. Just managing the exit. What do you need?" "Same thing I've always needed from you. Discretion, loyalty, and when the time comes, help making sure everything happens according to plan." "You got it, boss." To the end. To the end. To the end. To the end, I agreed. Next, I told Elias. Called him to the study on a Sunday morning. Poured to whiskeys despite the early hour. Some conversations demanded ritual. "You're going to be running things sooner than expected," I said after he'd settled in. He studied my face, reading what I hadn't said. "How long?" 6 months. Maybe less. Definitely not more. He set down his whiskey. Untouched options. Chemotherapy that might buy a few months of misery. Surgery that probably won't work. Radiation that definitely won't. Or acceptance, which is what I've chosen. Jesus. Richard, no need for him. I've made my own arrangements. We sat in silence, not uncomfortable, We'd learned to share quiet as easily as conversation. Finally, he spoke. What can I do? Keep building, keep learning. Keep being the son Thomas would have been proud of. And when I'm gone, remember the lessons, but forget the teacher. Make the empire yours, not mine. The will's updated, you get everything, except Isabel's $50,000 a year. That continues until she dies or violates the terms. Small price for a clean conscience. Have you told her? No, and I won't. She lost the right to my deathbed when she tried to put me in one prematurely. She's still your daughter. Biology doesn't grant privileges. She made her choice. I've made mine. Let's not waste time on what can't be changed. Over the following weeks, I put affairs in order with methodical precision. Every account documented. Every strategy outlined. Every relationship transferred. I created a manual for running the empire, not because Elias needed it, but because thoroughness was habit. The letters took longest. One for Elias, to be opened after my death. One for Henderson, thanking him for decades of service. One for Marcus, with instructions and a bequest he wouldn't expect. Even one for the charity that would benefit if Isabel contested anything. Might as well prepare for all contingencies. The letter to Catherine took 3 attempts. How do you write to the dead? What do you say to someone who saw everything coming before you did? In the end, I kept it simple. Thank you for the years. Thank you for the wisdom. Thank you for warning me about Isabel, even if I learned too late. I'll see you soon. I burned it in the fireplace. Watched smoke carry words to wherever she was waiting. Felt something settle in my chest that wasn't cancer. The physical decline accelerated through autumn. Weight fell off despite Marcus's attempts to feed me. Energy became a finite resource to be rationed. Pain became a constant companion to be managed. But my mind stayed sharp. That mattered more than anything. I could still review contracts, still advise Elias, still be myself even as my body rebelled. You need to tell people, Elias urged during one of our sessions. The team should know. Transitions are easier with warning. They'll know when they need to know. Right now, uncertainty would create instability. When I'm too weak to hide it, we'll announce. Not before, so I hid it. Tailored suits, concealing weight loss. Scheduled meetings when energy peaked. Painkillers timed to maintain appearances. The last great performance of a lifetime spent performing strength. But some things couldn't be hidden forever. By November, the signs were obvious. The gaunt face, the careful movements, the way I sometimes gripped the desk when pain spiked. I gathered the inner circle. The same conference room where I'd introduced Elias. The same faces, now studying mine with growing understanding. I'll make this brief, I began. I'm dying. Cancer. Months left, not years. Elias has full authority, effective immediately. Any questions about transition should go to him. Any questions about my condition are irrelevant. We're here to ensure continuity, not to discuss mortality. They absorbed it professionally, as I knew they would. These were people who dealt in reality, not sentiment. They asked practical questions, received practical answers, and began the mental shift from my leadership to Elias's. After they left, Elias stayed behind. That was cold. Even for you, clarity is kindness. They needed facts, not feelings. Now they have them. What about your feelings? I'm a dying man who built an empire and found a worthy heir. My feelings are irrelevant. My preparations are what matter. December brought winter and worse pain. I gave up the morning runs, then the office visits, then pretending I wasn't dying. The body has its own timeline, indifferent to will or determination. I spent days in the study, watching the city through windows that had framed decades of ambition. The same view, but everything changed by perspective. Buildings I'd coveted, then owned, then passed on. A physical legacy that would outlast the physical form that created it. Elias visited daily. We'd review business, but increasingly we just talked about his father, about paths taken and not taken, about what mattered when nothing mattered. Any regrets? He asked one snowy afternoon. I should have seen Isabel clearly sooner. Either fixed what was broken or cut ties before they strangled us both. But pride and hope are powerful drugs. She might still come around. Death has a way of clarifying things, no. Some bridges burn too thoroughly to rebuild, and that's okay. Not every story needs a happy ending. Some just need an ending. I hired a private nurse, Discreet, professional, expensive. Not for care, I could afford better than Avalon Gardens. But for convenience. Someone to manage medications and maintain dignity while body failed and spirit endured. The letters to Isabel sat unwritten. What was there to say? That I loved the daughter she'd been, but not the woman she'd become. That her betrayal had freed me to find a better heir. That I forgave her, but couldn't forget. In the end, I wrote 3 sentences. You were loved. You chose differently. The choice was yours, as the consequences are mine. I sealed it, gave it to Henderson with instructions. Only if she asked. Only if she came. Otherwise, let silence speak louder than words. By January, I was confined to the penthouse. The empire ran without me. Elias at the helm, the machine functioning as designed. I watched from increasing distance as life continued without my participation. Marcus rigged a hospital bed in the study so I could still see the city. Elias brought reports I pretended to read. The nurse managed pain with increasing doses of decreasing effectiveness, but my mind held. That's all I asked. To die thinking, not vegetative. To exit aware, not absent. To end as I'd lived in control of what could be controlled. One evening, Elias brought photo albums. Pictures spanning decades. Most, including his father. We went through them slowly, memory by memory, until we reached one that stopped us. Both Dot Thomas and I, young men in cheap suits, standing in front of the first building I'd ever bought, both of us grinning like we'd conquered the world. Neither knowing that one would die young and the other would die rich. He would have been so proud, I said, of you, of what you've become, of what you'll build. He was proud of you too, said Richard. Gold was the only honest man in a dishonest business. Said you'd build something that lasted. I did. And now it's yours. Build it bigger, build it better. But always build it honest. We sat quietly as snow fell over Manhattan, the city that never sleeps, preparing for another night of dreams and schemes. I'd been part of its story for 6 decades. Soon I'd be memory. But memory, properly structured, is its own immortality. I've left instructions, I told Elias, for after. Nothing dramatic. Cremation, not burial. No funeral, just a gathering if you want. Take the ashes to the warehouse in Queens. Scatter them where it all started. Seems fitting. What about Isabel? If she comes, she comes. If she doesn't, she doesn't. Her choice, like everything else, you're really going to die without reconciling. I'm going to die honest. Reconciliation requires truth from both sides. She's never admitted what she tried to do, never apologize for plotting against me. Deathbed forgiveness is for movies. Real life is messier. What if she does apologize? Shows up, genuinely sorry. Then you'll handle it, with more grace than I could. That's why you're the heir and she's not. February arrived with brutal cold and final decline. The pain broke through pharmaceutical barriers. Breathing became work. Consciousness became intermittent. But in moments of clarity, I felt something. Approaching peace. The empire was secure. The heir was ready. The betrayer was neutralized. The story was complete except for punctuation. I spent a last good day writing final instructions. Small things. Which whiskey to serve at the gathering. Which jazz to play. Who to invite and who to exclude. Details that didn't matter but mattered because they were last details. That night, I dreamed of Catherine. Young Catherine, brilliant and beautiful, seeing through my ambition to something worth loving. She didn't speak, just smiled. Approval or welcome, I couldn't tell. Maybe both. I woke to Elias reading. He'd taken to spending nights in the study, keeping watch, like his father would have. Like a son should. Almost time, I said. I know. Anything left undone, nothing that matters. Everything that matters is handled. The rest is just breathing until breath stops. Any last wisdom? For the record, I thought about it. 60 years of life, 30 years of building, 3 years of preparing. For this moment, what distillation of experience could I offer? Money is just keeping score. Power is just organized effort. Success is just discipline compounded. But connection, that's the only thing that transfers. The only thing that lasts. I got that wrong for too long. Don't make my mistakes. I won't. Different mistakes, maybe, but not yours. Good. That's evolution. That's how it should be. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of completeness. An empire built, an heir chosen, a life lived fully, if not perfectly. Outside Manhattan pulsed with its eternal energy. Inside, mine ebbed toward silence. But silence, properly prepared for, is its own statement. The king was dying. Long live the king. Everything else was just waiting. The last day came with unusual clarity. Sometimes the body grants a final gift, a moment of peace before the end. I woke without pain, mind sharp as the February morning. Elias was there, as he'd been every night for 2 weeks. Sleeping in the chair, Marcus Aurelius open on his lap. Even unconscious, he was learning. His father would have been proud. "You look better," he said when he noticed I was awake. "The candle flares before it gutters. Today's the day. You can't know that. 60 years of living in this body. I know its rhythms, its messages. It's telling me we're done." He didn't argue. We'd moved past the denial stage weeks ago. Now there was only acceptance and preparation. Marcus arrived at 7, as he had every morning for a decade. But today he brought something extra. A bottle of the Macallan 1946. The same vintage. I had been drinking the night I decided to disinherit Isabel. "Figured you might want a taste," he said. "For old times. You know what that bottle costs." "You." "No, I don't care." I smiled, the first real smile in weeks. Poured 3 glasses. You, me, and Elias. If I'm drinking my last drink, I'm drinking with the only family I have left. Marcus poured with steady hands. We raised glasses in the morning light. No toast. What was there to say that hadn't been said? The whiskey burned beautifully. Complex, layered, patient. Everything good things should be. I managed half the glass before exhaustion hit, but it was enough. One last taste of excellence. The morning passed in quiet preparation. The nurse checked vitals we all knew were failing. Henderson arrived with final documents. Everything signed, sealed, delivered. The empire officially Ilias's now, though it had been his in practice for months. "Any word from Isabel?" Henderson asked quietly. "No, and there won't be. She made her choice, I've made mine. Let's not pretend death changes either." Around noon, something shifted. The clarity sharpened to an almost painful degree. Colors seemed brighter, sounds clearer. The city beyond my windows more vivid than it had been. In years I knew what it meant. The body's last surge,